Okay, let's start out with the axial bones, the bones in the middle of the body, including the skull here. Let's see, this is the frontal bone here, frontal bone, the two parietal bones up here. So that's a parietal bone, frontal bone. Okay, bring it on around here. Here's the temporal bone right here, temporal bone. Okay, we've got two temporal bones. And in the back of the skull, here's the occipital bone. Okay, we have sutures. They're immovable joints. Here's a laminoid suture right here. A little joint, laminoid suture. Here's the sagittal suture right here, sagittal suture. Okay. Here, right here, it's kind of hard to see in this light. Let's see. This is the squamous suture. It's real flat. Squamous suture. Okay. And here is the coronal suture right here. Coronal suture, like a crown across there. Immovable joints. Okay, let's go into some of these bones here. We got the nasal bone right here, nasal bone. Okay, we got the maxillary bone right here, maxillary, the upper, and the mandible's missing right here, so the jawbone would be the mandible. So here on this skull right here, here would be the mandible. Mandible. You got 36 teeth. 32 teeth, I'm sorry, 16 at the bottom, 16 at the top. They fit in there. Okay, back to the bones of the skull. Like I said, you got the nasal bone. Here's the cheekbone. It's called the zygomatic bone with a Z. Zygomatic bone. And here's the zygomatic arch right here. See that? The zygomatic arch. Okay. So here's that deviated septum right there is the perpendicular process of the ethmoid bone. Ethmoid with an E. So, looking at this skull here, here it is right here. Perpendicular process of the ethmoid bone right here. Okay, turn the skull over and you'll see this is maxillae, the hard palate, maxillae palatine bone, and there's all of this is the maxillae palatine bone, the roof of your mouth, the hard palate they call it. Here's the vomer. See this little bliddly bone right here? That's the vomer. Also, look, this is the vomer right here. It kind of sticks out here. The little thing that sticks out, that's the vomer. Okay. Let's take the top of this skull off right here. Okay. Sphenoid bone with an S. It looks like a big-eared bat in flight. All of this is the sphenoid bone. See that? You got to use your imagination to see the bat. Okay, and that's the sphenoid bone inside your skull. Here's a foramen magnum. A foramen is a hole in the bone. Your spinal cord goes to this foramen magnum, right up to your brain. Okay. Like I said, it's hard to see this ethmoid bone. That's the perpendicular process of the ethmoid bone there, that little plate. And here's the model. This plastic model, a sagittal cut of a human being. All of this is the ethmoid bone. See that? It's called there's the conchas of the ethmoid bone. So that's called the nasal cavity there. And we got these here's the sphenoidal sinus bone, sphenoid bone right here. Here's the frontal bones, frontal sinus. And you got the ethmoid sinuses here. It's when you get in sinus infection. So that would be the ethmoid bone, and this would be the sphenoid bone. Okay, that concludes the skull. Right here we have the sternum. Here's the manubrium of the sternum, the body of the sternum, and the xiphoid process of the sternum right here. Sternum starts with an X. Okay, we got 12 pairs of ribs here. Here's your clavicle. That's not a rib. So you got the first 7 ribs are true ribs. 8 through 12 ribs are false ribs because they don't tie right into the sternum. They come off this hyaline cartilage here. And the last 2 are false ribs and floating ribs. You see that? It doesn't connect to the sternum at all. So these 2 are false and floating ribs. So the ribs are first 7 from the top are true ribs. 8 through 12 are false ribs. And 11 and 12 are false and floating ribs. Okay. We go on down. We got 12 vertebrae here. The neck vertebrae are called cervicals. There's 7 of them. See this rib articulation? The middle ones, these are thoracics. There's 12 thoracic vertebrae. And the big ones down at the bottom are the lumbar vertebrae. Okay? Lumbar. They don't have any rib articulation. And you got your sacrum bone right here. Sacrum bone and your coccyx bone. Looks like a rattlesnake tail. So here's your sacrum bone right here. Sacrum bone. See these foramen here? Nerves run through there. Spinal nerves run through these foramen. A hole in the bone is called a foramen. And here's the coccyx bone right here. Looks like a rattlesnake tail right here. Coccyx bone and sacrum bone. Okay, let's take a look at these vertebrae. Okay, if I were to lay this on the table, I would know that's a cervical vertebrae. See these transverse foramen right there? On both sides, arteries and veins run through those foramen. So only the cervicals have these foramen. So you got transverse foramen and on the 7 cervicals. Okay, your thoracic bone, you got 12 thoracics and they all have rib articulation, ribs attached to them. Okay, so you got your vertebral foramen right here. The spinal cord runs through there. There's no transverse foramen. Rib articulation occurs right here. And here's the big body. The fibrocartilage fits right there. You never want bone on bone here. So you got your fibrocartilage there, disc. Okay, look. The spinous process right here, it points down. This is thoracic, like in a giraffe nose, he says in the book. So the spinous process points down, like in a giraffe. Can you see the giraffe? That's a thoracic vertebrae then. Got 12 of them. Okay, the lumbar vertebrae, they're the bottom 5. Here's the body. Okay, here's the vertebral foramen where the spinal cord runs through there. And the lumbar, they look like a moose nose. You see that spinous process right there? Looks like a moose. Can you see the moose? Okay, let's go over the parts of these. Here's the body. Okay. Here's the spinous process, they call it. The moose nose. The ears are the transverse foramen. I'm sorry, transverse processes. No transverse foramen. Just a vertebral foramen. Okay. Okay, look. This part right here they call the pedicle. It connects, see these 2 pedicles? It connects the body. And here's the lamina right here, this part that connects the spinous process. So these 2 are the lamina, and that part is the pedicle. You just got to know these numbers. There's 7 cervicals, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar. Notice the lumbar, there's 5 lumbar down there. They don't have any rib articulation. articulation is the thoracics. And the cervical vertebrae, there's 7 cervical vertebrae, they all have transverse foramen. Thoracic vertebrae look like a giraffe nose with that spinous process. And the lumbars look like a moose. That's why they call it a spinous process. Look, there's the cervicals. There's the thoracics, the spinous process, the nose points down. See that? And the lumbars. Can you see the moose? There's the spinous process, the spine, the spinous process.